And we are back up and running on this lovely Wednesday, June 19th. Again, happy Juneteenth, everybody, especially those of you out in the U.S. Yep, especially you. It's a holiday, and I hope you understand the significance of the holiday, and it's not just another one to have a good time, all right? It's important to understand our history. So, like I said to you guys, we have the Minister for Education with us this morning. So let me just make sure that we're up and running properly. Make sure that you guys are on the live and you know what to do. As soon as you're coming in, just hit the share button. And you're not hearing me clearly? Okay, good. All right. Yeah, it's fine on my end. All right. So check your volume, but because my levels are showing that I'm good. So check yours and we'll be good as well. All right. So guys, come on in the room, like I said. And of course, you know, it's almost 2 years marking the National Democratic Congress victory at the polls and of course forming the government. So we've got a lot to talk about this morning. So we're not going to waste time. You know, we usually spend some time doing our roll call and the pleasantries and finding out what's happening. This morning, it is one of our serious mornings. All right. So come on in the room and I'm sure our Minister, Senator, the Honorable David Andrew, will have quite a bit of information to disseminate for us this morning under the umbrella of Ministry for Education, because you know there's a lot happening there. So this morning you should leave being in the know regarding the Ministry for Education. Pepsi, good morning. Yeah, that's what's happening today. We usually start at 11, so you were very early, but now we're on point. So anybody that's come on in and share the live to give other folks the opportunity to be part of the program. If you're listening via radio 95.1, 95.3, good morning. If you're viewing via YouTube or Facebook, good morning to you as well. So we're not gonna waste any time. Like I said, we're getting straight into it. We have the Minister for Education and of course Big Parish reference this morning. Listen, we got to do a high five. We have Big Parish in the building this morning. They can't talk to us today. Today's officially our day. Big Parish strong this morning. Minister, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Good morning to you. I am very well.
Bring up the mic closer to you because you have a soft voice.
Okay. Or probably I could come a little closer.
Yes, you could come a little closer.
Right.
Right.
Am I sounding clearer?
Yeah, much better.
Right. So I am doing very well, thanks. I am keeping the important things important and keeping my focus in that direction. And that is proving to be quite helpful and keeping me in a very good mental space.
And that is something a lot of us can use because we tend to leave over here and go over there when we should be focused on here.
Correct.
There's a lot that we need to get done here, but we pay attention a lot of times to what's happening over the fence, right? So
Correct.
that can definitely take us a long way indeed, minding your business, the one that
That's
pays
right.
you. So like I said, we have a lot to talk about. Almost 2 years seems like yesterday, you know, and I'm sure it feels the same for you. So before we get into, you know, the meat of the matter, maybe you can spend a little time talking about your 2 years. How has it been for you?
It's been a very interesting journey. From having actually little or no political ambition until I met the Prime Minister. And initially getting together simply to see how we could help Grenada and what we can do to promote advancement and progress in Grenada, even if it meant forming a pressure group or an NGO. And that morphed into saying, let's get involved. And here we are today. And that journey has been quite interesting. I think one of the most rewarding things is the hope and the aspiration that I saw our winning and coming into office bring to the Grenadian people. I have seen how people started to breathe again. People started to dream again. People started to hope again. And for me, that was, and still remains, very, very inspirational. So that part is an ongoing reward for me. And I think then the opportunity just to be part of what I believe could be a very transforming era for Grenada is, again, another big win for me, because people live and they die, and sometimes people don't even know why.
And a lot of people don't know their whys.
Yeah.
That's important.
And so when you get involved in something as huge and as transformative as this, that has the potential to transform your nation, I mean, it doesn't get much, much better than this under God. You see? And so that's big, and for me as well. Of course, there are the challenging parts where the expectations remain excessively above what may be humanly possible. Everybody wants to see you. So somebody might be complaining right now that they're not seeing me somewhere because, of
But
course,
you're
I'm here.
doing something.
Right. So that's one of the challenges. You always need to be everywhere. But of course, you can only do what you can as a human. And balancing your actual presence and the expectations with all of the requirements has taken a bit. It's an ongoing balancing act, because there's family.
Plus, there's family.
There's still your personal life, the things you used to do. How well do you balance that? All of the requirements locally, constituency-wise, and even regionally.
But for your mental health, you have to have some sort of balance.
Correct. So
and a lot of people don't realize that. They think that as a minister, you have to keep going, like, the Energizer Bunny, but you have to take into consideration your mental health is also important.
Very much so. And so I'm a mental health practitioner, so I am very keen on maintaining that mental space. And that's why in my early answer, I could say to you that I've been focusing the important things. And that helps to keep the balance. But I think I'm doing great. I am balancing all of them. My family is fine. We're enjoying good health. I can't recall getting sick since this walk. So it's been good. Thank God for that.
Thank God for that. Now, in terms of, you said, Honorable Dickon Mitchell, politics was never in the pipeline for you, but of course, Honorable Dickon Mitchell definitely made you see that light. One thing I can admit is that for somebody, you've been in education, as an educator yourself, over the years, we tend to look at politics as something that older people are involved in. And I think one of the highlights for me coming out of, the last general election was seeing the amount of young people that showed interest in politics, who are on lives with, sometimes you go onto the lives and you see probably a handful of people when it comes to discussing the business of the country or politics or whatever. You'll see a handful. But seeing thousands of young people on different lives at a given time, seeing them showing up to the different pocket meetings and what have you, how did that make you feel?
Well, I think it heralded and signaled a new era in Grenadian politics. I'm not sure many of us, when I grew up, I didn't even get to meet the representative in my area.
You heard about them?
I heard about them. I knew their name because I had to memorize their names for general science or something of that sort. You never knew them. And politics and governance, they were far-fetched concepts. But the fact that we were able to break the back of that, I think is very transformative in itself. And I think we've demonstrated to many young persons, ourselves leading the charge, to show that you can get involved in nation building at the highest level. And that's very important because our societies, our country, has more in it for the younger generations than it does for people like me who might be closer to 90 than somebody who's 25. You see? And getting them involved and understanding the process and understanding how they can become involved in governance and policy making and building across the country is important. And I think that's what the last election did by way of getting young people involved and showing them that it's possible.
Now, as we look ahead, of course, you have 2 years under your belt and holding the portfolio as Minister for Education. I want to focus a little bit first on the successes, and then we're going to speak on some of the things you've done and the challenges, etc., and looking ahead as well. So, from the Minister for Education standpoint, let's reflect on the success, the areas of success for the last 2 years under your leadership.
Right. So, there have been several areas of successes, I would call. I would want to categorize them on the access to education, education financing, curriculum reform, and student support, just for ease of category of grouping. And first, I want to put on record my profound appreciation to the staff at the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education is a ministry that's one of the most trafficked ministries. We serve over 20-something thousand students on any given day. Of course, their parents, so you could rag that up into the thousands too. Then we have the teachers. And those are in the thousands, the principals, the unions. We have multiple stakeholders. And then we still have to engage the regional and international agencies. So it's a lot of traffic at the Ministry of Education. And should something go wrong with one school out of the 160 something, there's an issue. Should something go wrong with one student, we have potential for issues. And so it's a lot of traffic taking place. Needless to say, the people who want the documentation, the exam reports, and the CXCs and all of those. So it's a lot going on. And I want to put on record my profound thanks to all of the staff at the Ministry of Education who has worked with diligence over the last 2 years and contributing significantly to the successes that we have realized at the ministry. So, I mean, this government has continued to prioritize education, as you might be aware. It's one of the 2 top priorities for this administration. And so under access to education, quite a few things were done to improve the country's access to education. You would well be aware that one of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which Grenada signed on to, is access to quality education, SDG 4. And so, for one, we have introduced universal secondary education, where every child who attempts the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment gets to go on to secondary school.
CPA.
And we think that is important because it takes away the stigma. It takes away the talk about you're intelligent, you are not, you're bright, you're dunce, you staying back. And then the psychological trauma of being left behind socially by your friends and all of that is eliminated. And we appreciate that could come with its own little drawbacks, but we believe the advantages by far outweigh the drawbacks that somebody might argue. And so additionally, we have put supports in place for those students. So we have the curriculum department ensuring that retired teachers, police officers, people in the mental health field get together to provide weekly support sessions, be it in literacy and numeracy, for the persons who were on the lower end of the performance spectrum as it relates to the CPA exam. So I'm happy that we didn't just include or introduce universal secondary education, but we've put in place support, the psychosocial support, the remedial support, and all of those things, personal development support. So that's access. In addition to that, we have also passed very recently in both houses of parliament the Education Amendment Bill, which extends the mandatory or the compulsory school age. Formerly, it was still 16, from 5 to 16. Now we make it from SIM 5 to 17 plus. Well,
What's
what
the
it
rationale
means,
behind? Because I realize there are some people who are for and against it.
right? So I want to talk about that, but we say 17 inclusive, and that's the legal language. What that means is actually 18, because inclusive means every month thereafter until you become 18.
18. Okay.
So it's actually being increased to 18. In other words, you cannot leave school before you get to 18. And when we say that, let me clarify, we do not mean secondary school. We mean you cannot leave the formal education system before you turn 18.
Before you turn 18.
Yeah? So you can leave school at 16, secondary school that is, but this education amendment would ensure that you have an obligation, or your parents have an obligation, while you're still a child, to continue your educational journey.
Now, how do we ensure that happens? Because as it is now, there are times you see children already when should be in school, they're not in school and they're looking to hustle. They're looking for a job. They're looking for things to do. How do we ensure that it will work that way?
Well, we have a system of school attendance officers
Okay.
who currently ensure that students are not missing from the registers. We actually took a parent to court a few months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Ministry of Education took a parent to court for failing to send a child to school because the law provides for that.
That's
So we have the school attendance officers who are supposed to enforce school attendance, even with the help of the police and the court system. So we know we might need to strengthen that area because we are asking more grown young persons to go on to school. But rest assured, though, we'll do that if we must. But we are confident a significant percentage of the students already go on to TAMCC, go on to NULO. So it's not something that is, different or strange to many students. We are just ensuring.
In the law now and
Yes.
can be enforced.
Yes, we just want to make sure that all of them are mandated to go on. And if we have to strengthen the school attendance department to so do, we will. But we are going to engage parents, engage the school community to make sure they're all aware and all see the value of it. So it becomes more of a motivation rather than something we have to force out of them,
Okay.
So yes, so we have passed the Education Amendment Bill to improve access to education, where we hope to be able to drill down more skills, extra tooling, so that our students can churn out.
Yeah, that's
thereafter.
the next part of it in terms of, we understand that not every child is academically inclined. It's not, it's just not possible. Some are way ahead while some take a little time and needs more work to get to a particular level. How are we going about in terms of all the part of the successes that we're speaking on to ensure that we prepare them for the future, and not everything requires, books, math, English, what have you, but there are a lot of skill sets that they can, do that will take them even further.
Yeah. So we are approaching that from a number of different angles. From the early childhood level, because we recognize if we put proper focus there and we get the numeracy and literacy skills in the early childhood development stages of the child's development, less of those challenges will persist, right? The reading and the comprehension and all of those things. So while we do that, though, we recognize that there's some key reforms. So, for instance, we have expanded the TVET offerings in schools, in primary schools. So we have made sure almost all of our primary schools now have access to TVET. Now, formerly, a few schools had access, but since
For
we've
those
got
who's probably not too au fait with what TVET is, maybe just tell us.
technical and vocational education and training. Yeah, that's what TVET is. Technical education, technical and vocational education and training. So we're talking technical education here. We're talking skills. And we are saying, since we've gotten in, we have expanded the offerings of technical and vocational education and training in all primary schools. So primary schools all have access to it. They get sensitized about it because we want to change the stigma that skills education has had over the years.
Listen, I had a plumber, I made a call to a plumber some time ago, and when he quoted me a particular figure, and he came and he was doing the work, and he was like, yes, I have 2 more jobs to do, and I'm taking next week. I mean, what do you mean you're taking next week off? Yeah. He's like, listen, the amount of work I've done for the past, I can afford to take, and I work for myself, I can afford to take time off because this is such and such. Because I'm questioning him, and I'm like, wow. So you're a plumber. And then he went on while in conversation, he's telling me about other people who, electricians, etc.
Correct.
How much they earn. And I'm like, I'm probably in the wrong field here. And they're working for themselves. And we seem to put a lot of focus on, okay, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a teacher, not realizing that these skill sets actually do command a nice salary.
So. And the sad thing about it is that over the years, a lot of parents, even educators too, have said, listen, he can't do the math, as to use the term. He's not academically inclined, so go and do something with your hand.
Making it sound like,
an afterthought. But the truth is, we currently have some training going on for TVET teachers right now at the Trade Center. I just came from there because teachers and education officials in the TVET area are being further tooled and skilled for skill education across our schools. And we want to change the concept that is an afterthought. We want to make them recognize that intelligent persons must get involved in skills education too, because there's the design area, the design element, where you design new products, where you design solutions, and the engineering side. All of those require strong academic competence, the physics and the math. So we can't just relegate our skills persons to just doing the helper roles and the hard laborious tasks. We have to get to the point where our most intelligent students see a pathway to get to skills. Notwithstanding that we don't have that fully fleshed out in the school system now, it's currently being discussed as to how we are going to mainstream skills in our education system, right?
That
So
would be
all of that is
awesome.
being considered. And I think that's a success. The fact that we have the conversation. In 2023,
Recognized it.
we approved a national TVET policy and strategy to assist in closing the gap between the skills that students come out of school with and what the world of work requires. And we're working with that policy, and the expansion of TVET in primary schools was a part of that. Several other things, we are developing centers of excellence. We are currently in discussion with some schools that we want to convert to skill centers. I won't release any bit of that information until
So
we are ready for public.
would that be because youth and education go hand in hand, and while we're speaking to youth more for school age, we have to take into consideration youths who are no longer in school, but still you will find a lot of them, especially young men in our communities. You see them during work hours just chilling, you know. Would those skill centers, etc., would it be directed at those young men in particular, or just those of school
Both,
age?
because the intention is to have them both for schools for the purposes of mainstreaming skills in the formal education system, but also to be used in evenings and nights for
Great.
community education. So it will be dual purpose. Yeah.
Great.
So we have them both targeted. And you recall as well, when we introduced the free tuition policy, which is part of the next success, to take away the need for students to pay the $810 at TAMCC on NULO, we opened that to everybody who hasn't gone to NULO or TAMCC yet. So that category of persons can benefit from that skill training free of tuition charge as well.
The day when that was announced, I passed through Tantine and I swear it was Carnival already. We already had Carnival, but I thought we were having another one. The amount of young people I saw lined up. And based on your information, etc., how would you term that, the success of this particular initiative?
Listen, I think this is very transformative because, you see, access, I mean, we're talking access, although that is financing a bit. I remember my time, it was tough to go to school.
Especially coming from St. Andrew.
Yeah. And I remember the difficulty finding a ride, let alone school fees. And so when you have a situation where you can go without worrying about the tuition fee, you may have little struggles too, but there's something called resilience. I didn't die notwithstanding, and here I am. But if we make it easier as a government for people to continue getting education, I think we're setting our young people on a path where they can have a more successful life, where they can have stronger economic futures, where they can set up their families in a much better way. And so that is successful. NULO has reported that prior to they have two intakes. Prior to the second intake last year, they had already doubled the amount of students that were enrolled compared to the previous year, right? So there's a lot of uptake. A lot more young people are following through. I've met a couple of young men from Telescope, and they're like, "Boss, I'm going to NULO," about four of them. I'm going to NULO. We just have to work on something about how we get there on time. I was able to work along with them, right? But that made me happy because it means more young people are engaging those programs, and that's what we want.
But in terms of that as well, though, is that something that's in the foreseeable future? We know we have NULO on that side of the island. Would it be something we would see in other areas that would make it more central for other young people who might have difficulties getting to the New Life organization? Would we cease to see that happening?
Well, NULO is it's not a government-owned entity, so we can't direct
so you
them.
offer support.
We offer support. We are always ready to partner with them. Okay. We have increased the subvention to them to be able to facilitate and support the program that they do, because we recognize their programming is quite useful on a national scale. But we also will have centers of excellence. So let me say that. And the centers will be across the island.
Okay.
Different centers in different areas, be it IT, be it agriculture, fishing and fisheries, marine studies.
Carrico would be included?
Yes, Carrico is one of those. In fact, for the Center of Excellence for Marine Studies.
Okay,
so
great.
all of those are being considered. When fleshed out, you would have different centers of excellence across the island, and we hope that they'll be able to appropriately absorb all of our students, all of our young persons who want to be skilled within the school system as well as outside of it. So for me, that's setting that in motion is a huge success, right?
Now, also you mentioned, of course, the free tuition. But even though you have the free tuition, there are still parents, guardians, etc., who will literally say, I still don't have, in terms of providing transportation. Children have to eat. You can't learn on an empty stomach. Meals, tuition. Tell us about that and how do you intend to, your intentions with that is concerned.
At the ministry, we don't actively have a transport support yet at the Ministry of Education. However,
Yet, you said.
yes, because we are always ready to see how more we could improve the offerings and students' willingness to benefit from what we offer. But I'll say two things. One, the Ministry of Social Development still has some of these supports. There's the SEED program, which is actually support for education enhancement and development, targets that, right? So parents who have children and struggle, they get that support, and that's one of the things that's envisaged for being covered there, right? So that's still available. We didn't take that out. But I'm confident, though, that if a parent no longer has to worry about the $810, they're put so much closer to being able to weekly get the $50 or whatever it might take for transportation.
Because you need a start.
Yes.
Sometimes the tuition is the most important
Correct.
thing.
It was the largest cost factor that was debarring students from accessing higher education. And so we started with that one. I'm confident with the continuous conversations and consultation, we will get there and offer much more. But it does give parents and students an opportunity to build resilience and to become resourceful, plant a little bit. I know of persons who planted a lot, who did. In fact, I did that too.
Just last week, I was telling my listeners the way I got to enjoy going to school was to start getting cocoa, cracking cocoa, getting nutmeg, etc. It was not just get up and go to school. You had to actually work to go to school.
Correct. So I want us to be mindful a little bit that we don't do like the guy who wanted to help the butterfly get out of its cocoon when it was metamorphosizing, and he cut the hole open to make the butterfly come out easily, and then the butterfly came out all deformed because it didn't go through the rigors of having to squeeze out the extra fluids and to have the muscles develop properly. So when the butterfly came out, because it was helped so much, it just couldn't fly. Its head was too big, too much fluid, and we don't want to make that mistake. We want to have our nation's children become resourceful, be resilient.
That sense of discipline as well.
Correct.
It's not everything
So
will be handed
it's a
to you.
balance.
It's a balance.
Yeah.
I also want to make mention of, we speaking about skills, and I noticed, I think it was on social media a couple of days ago, I think this little girl was like 8 years old, and she was braiding hair, something that, people are probably my age don't even know how to do proper, and the way she was doing it, you would swear, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, wow. And somebody asked her, well, what do you want to do? And she was like, I want to do hair. At 8 years old, still going to school, but she knows that she wants to do hair. Now, these are some of the things that is part of who we are: the makeup, the hair, the nails, and you're having a lot of beauticians, etc. Will that also be part of some of the skill sets that we're offering? Apart, like we spoke on plumbing and all those things, but these are also things.
In the TVET strategy, that is one of the areas. There are about 10 areas identified. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but beauty, beauticians, that's one of the areas. So I do believe that is covered inside of there.
Okay.
Yeah. So it will be one of those in the centers.
Amazing.
So continuing with the successes, we talk about education financing. And another of the things we did there was to remove the school fees, the games fee, the lab fee, security fee.
This needed to be done in my time. That was pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pressure
Remove
every
that.
term to find those monies.
Correct.
It might seem like a little bit, but after buying books and all those things,
Correct.
back then, it was a lot.
Correct. And not just did we remove them, but we've since compensated the schools to offset whatever they were going to collect from the population of students. For collecting that, the ministry, the government has written a subvention to the schools to the tune of that to offset it. So the schools are not in a worse off place, but parents and students have easier access with less costs. We are financing education because we recognize that education is very important, right? So there's that. We talked about the free tuition. Then there's also the free meal policy that was introduced earlier this year, where students in all of the schools registered to the program now eat a free meal at the school feeding department, the Healthy Start and nutrition department of the ministry.
Fantastic.
That we find very significant. We might say it was only $3 or it was only $1, but for the parent who has 4 children
Zero
and has to
dollars.
find $4 every day for the week, sometimes it could be difficult. And so that too, when you listen to the reviews from people,
And not just the parent, you're taking the burden off a child. Because I remember
Correct.
children coming in and you're stressing, what am I eating? You're seeing everybody going out, and then you have to perform on a hungry stomach. It just don't work.
Yeah.
Hungriness and performance
Very
don't
much
work.
so. Very
you know,
much so.
so
So we've done that in terms of financing education. And the other thing I would say on the financing education is we have introduced a subvention, an allotment of funds to pre-primary schools. Now,
you
formally,
don't usually hear about pre-primary schools.
exactly. Formally, that was never done. Pre-primary schools they were just left, and they made it how they wanted. We've decided early childhood education and development is important. That's where it all
This
begins.
is where it starts.
You
yeah.
shape those
Set
children
the
from that level.
foundation.
From that level. So we have introduced for the first time a small subvention to all unattached pre-primary schools.
Why aren't we hearing these things loud enough? We're hearing all the other petty stuff. We need to hear more of these things.
Well, I think
and more
it's true.
awareness.
So I think we need to do some more
Yes.
in saying the things that we're doing. So thanks to folks like you who give us the opportunity to say them to the public over and over. But we do need to do a lot more about that. But there's a lot going on. But people tend to gravitate to things that are not even factual, things you just hear somebody say and everybody has an opinion about it, rather than the actual facts. But these are the realities.
There seems to always be a problem of governments go. The issue of disseminating information,
Yeah.
putting it out there.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is what's happening. This is what we're doing. This is what happened. This is what we're about to do. We seem to have a problem all the
Yes.
time, in hearing about the things. When something bad happens, well, everybody
It's
hears.
viral.
So the same way we hear about the not so good, the bad, and the ugly, we want to hear the good stuff as well.
Yeah. So we are actively working on that, and we take that as a fair critique that we need to improve on, and we'll be happy to do that because there's a lot of good stuff happening. We believe in early childhood education and development, and that subvention was indicative of the importance that we've put down there, so that if we start to resource them a bit more, we can get better outputs out of them, and the benefits could translate into the other levels of the education system. Yes.
Great.
So let's talk about the curriculum.
Uh-huh.
But there's some huge successes there too. And I want to start with so we talked about the Tibetan schools in primary schools. The introduction of Grenadian history in our schools, primary schools
Don't get me started.
and
It's been one of
secondary
my
schools.
I've went through my entire years of education doing history, and the most I could probably tell you about the Carib and the Arawak, they jumped off at Leapers Hill, and that's it. Christopher Columbus came, discovered Grenada, Nina, what's the other one name?
The Binta. Nina
That's-
Pinta and the Binta.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Our history seems to be something that is forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. So listen, man, I am so excited that I happen to be the sitting minister when this is happening. I'm a student of history. I did history at secondary school. I loved West
I
Indian
love history.
When I heard my daughter come home recently, she's a third former, and she says, "Daddy, I like Grenadian history. It's more interesting." I'm like, "Yeah, we did something right." She's actually interested in it. She is excited by it, And the more we get our people to learn and appreciate our history, the better. And so we've introduced that. We've had a wonderfully put together local history book by Dr. Nicole Dow, and it's in our primary schools, upper primary, lower secondary, just to fit it nicely in preparation for the Caribbean history, West Indian history syllabuses at third form. I'm excited about that, and for me that is foundational, is transformative Grenadian history in schools. That's a major success in my mind. And then the introduction of coding and technologies in schools. So we've started teaching coding since our very first year, coding in schools. And then we've launched technology clubs in a number of other schools to have technologies taught, drone technology, photography, robotics, AI.
This is the way of the
Correct.
future right now.
This
and
is
we can't afford to
actually-
be left behind.
Yeah, it's actually happening in schools as we speak, and we're expanding as we go along. And you talk about technologies. For the first time, was it last year? We had students write the CPEA exams electronically. Yeah, so they didn't have to bring the pencil and shade. And we had more schools do that this year. Yeah, so it's 2 years in a row, and we are looking in the very near future to have all of our primary schools do the Caribbean primary exit assessment electronically using their computers. It's where the world is going. And so we have to prepare them as an education system for that. And I think we are doing that very well by way of curriculum. Yeah. We've also had the introduction of Spanish in primary schools. So we have between 10 and 19 primary schools where Spanish is being done. We know that if you acquire language, if you must acquire it, you acquire it best in your early stages.
Not reaching secondary school from 3 and I'm fighting habla español and
Tout à
buenos
fait.
días.
Tout à fait. C'est le français pour moi. I mean, for me, it's French. But yes, the earlier you get them involved, the better. And with our tourism product being what it is, and the need for languages, we see it as critical to sensitize them and let them have an aptitude for it so that by the time they get to secondary school, there's some foundation there that allows them to uptake the language a lot better. So you're talking all of those remarkable things within the curriculum. We've introduced the creative arts. We have about 20-something teachers who are now equipped and trained to integrate the creative art and performing arts into their teaching as part of the curriculum. So we are doing a lot to rebrand the curriculum.
What about on the scholarship side of things?
Right, so that's an area. There's currently a consideration to have a number of teachers travel in summer to do a short course on the pedagogy of integrating the creative arts into regular teaching. That's done for consideration. We will, as part of our education scholarship policy, which is currently in draft form, is being reviewed at this point, select a number of areas that we believe are priority areas. Of course, the creative economy will be one of those. And we will have strategic numbers and quantities of persons sent to study in those areas. Skills would be among them. The creative economy would be among them. I could see agriculture. I could see a number of other areas, the health services, health technologies, the ICT, and a number of them. But that will be populated and informed by the other ministries. Education will just operate as the faucet through which that is coordinated to ensure the human resource capacity of the country is built in keeping with the priorities of the state and the trajectory of the government. You see, so that's happening.
I have a question here
Sure.
from someone. Can you ask the minister what measures are in place for a child that reaches the age for CPA, is brilliant but is in grade 5? Can this child be skipped and given the opportunity to do that exam?
Well, the skipping it's something that I know was practiced before. There are bodies of research that don't suggest that is necessarily the best. And from a developmental point of view, a child might be intelligent, but developmentally, from a social point of view, interaction point of view, you could have certain drawbacks.
So you'd rather they go through the process?
I would rather them go through. What we can have, if we have a child who is advanced, we encourage differentiated instruction in our schools. And in fact, teachers are trained in that. We often try to refresh them from time to time, where they can engage the high-flying student, the student who is advanced and who would catch the concepts a lot faster, that you engage them with additional work, you use them as peer tutors, you let them assist others, so that you find other ways to engage and validate the competence and intelligence of those persons. But from a developmental point of view, I would not recommend skipping, and I think I have quite a body of research that would support that too, because you don't want people to skip natural developmental phases. Because when you skip a child, you actually set them to operate with somebody 2 years or a year and a half, their senior, and the social mix might not be quite the same. And you could find them regressing in some instances or going back into a shell, and you don't want that.
I have another one here. They're asking, what about programs to keep students engaged during summer break? even if it's remote half day or summer out or summer pockets for a couple of weeks.
Right. Well, I think here is where we are open to collaboration with other stakeholders. I know some other ministries like social development and youth may have some programs, be it in sport, coaching, and that kind of stuff. As a ministry, though, it's the time we choose. Our teachers need a break. And so after we take the first 2 weeks from them in July to train them in whatever areas in the summer institute that we normally have, we allow them the opportunity to
travel,
to relax, to detox. And even the students need a break. So we don't want to overcrowd them. I was one person as a parent. My children, I didn't send them to many extra classes because I didn't want education to become a burden to them. Students must learn, they must grow naturally and enjoy growing, and education must not become overburdensome and burdensome to them. So I'm not, yes, opportunities for probably coaching to get them engaged. Should the ministry be the one to lead that? I'm not sure I'd say that, but we are quite open to collaborating with other stakeholders and partners to see those things happen with the consent of parents.
I firmly believe that when the time is given for a break, let them enjoy that break instead of giving them more to deal with. We are not robots, we are not machines. We're human as well. And again, I keep stressing the need for us to think about mental health. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and it's something we don't seem to understand. When it's like like a computer, it crashes. What happens? There's too much going on at one time. If you try to remember, it has a processor. If you try to open too many pages at once, it slows it down and it crashes on you. And the same can happen to us. You're trying to process too many things at once, you can burn out.
Very much
so. And as much as during the summer holiday, parents might be okay off to work and they may see there's something for them to keep them engaged, you also have to take into consideration their mental health. And mental health is not just when you get to be an adult. It can start from a very young age. You can have it, and then it can fully develop as you go as you get older. So it's something that parents also have to take into consideration. Can't be books every single day. Sleeping and waking, it's books,
Very much so.
That's something to take into consideration. Now, in terms of, we spoke about the skills training, we spoke about the tuition, etc., some of the successes. What about in terms of moving ahead? We're 2 years into government. You're 2 years into government. Having been an educator yourself, you've been it, right? You've witnessed it, you lived it. Looking ahead, what do you think would say is lacking or missing or needs improving in our education system?
Well, there are quite a few things. And in fact, the things that we are doing, they're being done to address some of those things that are lacking. So, I run the risk of going back and say some of the same things that we've talked about, because we are strategically trying to address some of those gaps. So obviously the gap between what the education system churns out and what the world of work requires, the skills gap, that's missing. In some cases, the outlook towards education and skills, we talked about that. So parents have to recognize skills is big money business. And if you want the money, focus skills and develop correct attitudes, because one of the challenges we're having now,
that's what I've been the question, the challenges.
The attitudes that a lot of people have, even young people. In several cases, you find employment for them, but they don't keep the jobs. I'm not sure they want it.
It's funny you said that, because someone sent me a screenshot of a conversation they had. Apparently, they advertised a job on social media. So the person reached out and said that I heard that heard you all hiring, and this is the screenshot they sent me. The person responded. The person sent a message, heard you all hiring, wanted the details. So the person said to them, firstly, it's good afternoon. Manners make man, then we can proceed. And then the person responded, bye, me ain't here to beg for no work.
Wow. That encapsulates it. I think it adds flesh to the point I was making. You see? And sometimes people complain, things grimy, but the unemployment rate is dropping, but the attitude to work is something that I think we need to take on a national campaign about, because you're giving them the jobs, and sometimes they go on the job for a day, a week, and they tell me, I don't want that. They don't want structured employment. They don't want to be accountable to somebody. They don't like the idea of somebody having to supervise them. They don't speak to people well. So a lot of these things we have to address within the education system. A lot of that requires paradigm shifting.
Shift starts
Requires
at 8,
mind
we
check.
get here at 8:30.
Right? So these are some of the gaps that I see that we are actively trying to engage.
Because
So
I've
one of
heard
the,
some of the complaints regarding the Mani trainees over the years. That's sometimes a discipline that is really lacking.
yeah. So one of the things we are actually contemplating, and I've started discussing with my management team at education, is the introduction of compulsory community service within the education system. I know TAMCC has an element of that for their program, but we want to make it across the entire school system. It's something that we have not fleshed out yet, but at every level, from as early as pre-K, where you might have to clean your table and wipe up, to higher levels where probably as a grade sixer, you can come down and read to the grade ones, or probably as a Form 3 student, you can sweep the yard of a neighbor, or probably as a Form 4, you can go and read for the residents, the persons, the patients at the Cadrona home, or something of that sort. So you have different. It's just being thought about.
You see,
and-
over the
and
years, we
talked-
seem to have focused a lot on the education. Go to school, get in, but we have not focused on the world of work now. Now you're out of school, you've completed all your degrees. Are you prepared now to
Yeah.
be an employee or an employer?
Yeah.
And you find that a lot of them were not mentally or physically or whateverly prepared
Yeah.
for that stage and phase of life.
So I think that is something we're actively looking at, how the programs that are developed, NTA certified, all of those, they are often soft skills components. And a lot more effort needs to be placed there to make sure that we drill down more seriously to have those attitudes addressed and soft skills acquired.
Well, we are almost out of time. Anything else on your list?
Yes, I do have. Student support. I think it's, you see, we talked about the lack of skills, soft skills. We have made some serious wins in that areas. So we've had for a number of years a shortage of counselors,
Yes.
school attendance officers, school feeding officers who offer support for the very things that we do in secondary schools, in primary schools, in the education system to support students. We have now hired additional counseling officers.
Thank you, because those counselors were tired.
Right.
They were
And so
overworked.
imagine we only had, I used to be a counseling supervisor. And I left in 2019. I was moved from that position to become the chief education officer in 2019. And nobody replaced me till we did something about it recently, within the last year.
And again, it comes back
So,
to us not taking
exactly.
mental health seriously.
Right. So we've hired a new list of counselors to offer more counseling and guidance counseling,
Fantastic.
career guidance to students in schools, both primary and secondary. We've also hired more school feeding officers, because for the longest while we've had only 2: monitoring, supervising, data
Only
collecting
2?
for the 100+ schools across the island. In the end, sometimes people complain a school didn't get enough, and sometimes they don't even report it to the ministry. Yeah? They probably call a radio station, because people like to do that these days. They probably call a radio station and say, well, food ran out somewhere. But if you have that limited capacity, that's what's going to
Hard
happen.
to keep in track.
So, but we have since hired additional officers, or about 2 or 3 additional officers, to strengthen that department. Then I want to talk about special education and early childhood education. In those 2 departments, we have hired additional officers. So in the special education department, we've hired Dr. Ald to head the department. She was formerly at the Victoria School for Special Education. She's a PhD. And a number of other officers. So the suite of services that we offer to the special education department is
So
now broadened.
important.
We can do a lot more in identifying the early signs of some kind of developmental delay, whether it's on the autism spectrum or be it ADHD or whatever it is, but we can have a wider suite of services for the assessments of those persons. That is being strengthened at the Ministry of Education, or has been, and also for the early childhood education department. We recognize that the earlier we get these students, the children, and get them with the right skills, the word attack skills, the phonetics, the literacy and numeracy skills, the less likely are they to have pervasive problems with mathematics and reading down the road. So we have done all of those things, and for me, those are huge successes within 2 years, and they're very transformative. And if we keep pressing, we are just going to see a lot more improvements in the education sector. And I'm just happy to be a part of this transformation that's happening at this time.
My final thing before we go is I'd like to see much more emphasis and focus being placed on reading. I remember back in all days, reading was a big thing. You had to read. We were part of libraries. You had to go to the library. We had reading competitions. In your classroom, you were allowed to read out loud. And I'm looking at children these days and reading and spelling. Mm-hmm. And now they're using like, okay, LOL and the short form to write a whole entire conversation. I looked at my niece's phone and I'm reading the conversation and everything. I'm like, do you want? She was like, yes, I know exactly what we're saying. So all of that now is helping them to not read and spell properly.
Yeah. The truth is, that's one of the things we are addressing at the ministry. So the curriculum department, and in particular the language department and the curriculum officers there, they have been tasked with the mission to find and locate the best softwares for self-teaching, because there are a lot of softwares right now where children can learn to read at their own pace. I saw my children do it, and they read Arabic and the PBS Kids, and probably those are free ones, and the Read Arabic isn't. But there are others. So they are currently reviewing, talking with the publishers of those softwares so that we can get a license, be able to use them so that students can, using the technology, almost be guided by the teacher, facilitated by the teacher, almost self-teach in terms of reading, because they're interactive. So that's one of the strategies we're using for both literacy and numeracy, and they're actively pursuing that. So probably you'd hear about that in short order.
Feel free to come back. I love having this conversation with you. Last question, can we know when CPA results will be out, please?
CPA results, we are hoping to have it this week. It's not yet with the Ministry of Education. You would appreciate it comes from CXC, the Caribbean Examination Council. When it gets to education, it comes in one big pool. We have to work on it to assign schools and to put it in its perspective, the order, the results.
Comes to Grenada.
Yeah, it just comes to Grenada. And so our ministry's officials would have to take some time to treat with it, but it's not yet at the Ministry of Education. We are hopeful that we are going to get it before the end of the week. So it looks like early next week that we'd have some degree of public announcement to make the CPEA results.
Good. Minister, like I said, I hope you'll come back again, because there seems to be quite a lot to talk about education. You know, it's such a big area, and there's so many that falls under the education umbrella. So hopefully we'll have you back soon, and it would not be year 3, but it will be before that, so we can have some conversations. We have the new school term coming up as well, so we'll be able to have conversations on that. So thank you so very much. Happy second year in office, and we look forward to seeing most of what you've said realized. Like you said, you know, some of the things wouldn't happen overnight, but we keep in faith and fingers crossed that we will see them, you know, in due time.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to all of the listeners, those who asked questions, and all who followed. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
All right.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for powering up. And I shall see you guys tomorrow for the final one for the week. For those of you who made the time to stick around to learn something and, of course, to be part of an informative session, I thank you. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow, same time, same place. Do have yourselves a great Wednesday.
Ladies Room comes to you compliments of Renwick and Thompson Limited and Beacon Insurance.
New customers, for a limited time and in celebration of our 50 years of independence, you can get a $50 gas